Hi, my name is Shirley Kerr, and I have volunteered with Donate Life Northwest in helping make the quilt for the last few years. Okay. If you are interested in making a block for Threads of Life, you need to go online and find the forms. This one tells you how to submit. It gives you the lines for how big to make it, and the dotted line is what will be visible on the block after it gets sewn into the quilt. I have cut out a little cardboard thing that I can lay down on top of something, and anything inside that will be visible on the quilt. Anything outside will be sewn into the seam allowance and it won't show. So be careful when you make it that what shows is a 7 by 7, but they've asked you to make it 8 by 8 with the edge so we can sew that in. When you go to make a block, it's up to you what you put in it, what you put on it. It's nice to have the name of who you're honoring and what for. I just did a little rough sketch. If you have somebody who's a camper or an outdoor person, you can just draw on there and then cut out an 8-inch piece of fabric, and you can use any number of things. The website lists heat and bond. I also like steam a seam too, and these are both fusible things. So you sew it to you don't sew it, excuse me. You trace a shape on the paper, you peel off one side, you stick it onto the wrong side of your of a piece of fabric and cut out the shape, and then you just plop the shape down here and iron it on. And it works very well. Heat and bond is a little more permanent than steam a seam 2, but steam a seam 2 is a little more flexible, so it's not as stiff. So it's anybody's desire what they want. The website tells you to avoid stick-on paper things or anything with a lot of thickness to it. That includes hot glue gun. I'm the person that for the last few years has sewed all the blocks together to make the quilt, and there are times that I have peeled off hot glue off of blocks because I knew there's no way you could sew through that hot glue to sew it together. So I've had to peel it off and do something else to the block just to make sure I could sew it in. So please don't use real thick hot glue. And if you put a paper sticker on, by the time we handle the blocks, they fall off and I lose them and I don't know where it goes to. So those are things. For supplies, you can do whatever you want. Since I sew, I have a cutting mat. I have a rotary cutter. This one is a little one. I have a bigger one, but it cuts fabric. I use a clear ruler to tell me what size things are and to cut straight lines. But you can also do it with a pair of scissors and a pencil. Just draw a line. Make sure you try to be as accurate as possible. When you go to write somebody's name and date on the paper, this is a Pigma pen, which I like to use. You can also use a permanent Sharpie, and I have used those quite a bit. Make sure it's not going to bleed all over your fabric when you start to write and it goes on the fabric. So the Pigma pen does not bleed. The Sharpie, if you don't put it too heavy, it works good. Once in a while, it will bleed a little bit. So those are supplies you need. Fabric, You can buy fabric, lots of places. Joann's, Craft Warehouse, any number of fabric and quilt shops. And they often sell what they call a fat quarter, which is a piece of fabric that's 22 by 19 or something. And they usually cost, $2.50, $3.25, depending on what fabric it is. And those will give you just a chunk of fabric that you can cut up to make your things here. If you have a friend who does sewing, go beg them for scraps. Or if you're making a block for somebody you know, and I have seen them in past quilts, they have cut up, a man's shirt and put a piece of his shirt on a block that commemorates him. And on the quilt, if you look back through past quilts, people have, I showed you how to put it, or showed you can do trees and a tent and a thing. I have seen tractors. I have seen trucks. I have seen a chainsaw. A lot of people put hearts on, if that's what reminds you of grandma or whatever, and roses and flowers and butterflies. So it's up to you and what your preference is and what the person you're honoring liked. I have made a couple that are just a quilt block with a name on the inside. And so use your own imagination. Please don't be intimidated. Yeah.